Chevre, how are you? I hope everyone is gesund, stark, und freilich begashmus und beruchnis. I hope everyone is healthy, strong, and happy physically and spiritually. Today is Erev Shabbos Kodesh Pasha Shemini, and it's Pasha Sachidish, and we'll speak about the thought for the week, Emir Hashem. But first, as usual in the last couple of months, we give first tzedakah, Gedel tzedakah shemakareves esagula. Mashiach should come now, the war should be over, all the hostages should return home safely. We'll start with a prayer as usual, and this prayer is mentioned in this week's Parsha, and that is what we say also, Matzoi Shabbos Kodesh, after Shemini Maitiv, by Maitiv. V'hi noya madinoya liheinu aleinu, omai seyedeinu kenen aleinu, omai seyedeinu koineneyo. May the pleasantness of Hashem be upon us. Establish for us the work of our hands. Establish the work of our hands. So this is a bracha that we say for the whole week. At the outset, from Mitzvah Shabbos Kodesh, we're getting the power that Hashem should reside in that work of our hands and give it hatzlacha. First of all, that it should be kol masecha yil shem shemayim. That everything Hashem should be involved in everything. Kol mashabara HaKadosh Baruch Hu bara l'chveidei. Everything's for Hashem's glory. Hashem's glory should be manifest in my work, and I should see the hatzlacha, the success, because I realize it's all in Hashem's hand. Uvarecha Hashem alikecha b'chol asher ta'aseh. It's the bracha of Hashem, birchas Hashem hi ta'asher. Okay, in this week's parsha, it mentions that prayer as it speaks about the 8th day of the inauguration and the consecration of the Mishkan. And it mentions first that after Aaron did all the work, he gave a bracha. That's in Pasuk Chof Beis, where the Pasuk says that Vayisa Anas Yodav Elom Vayivarachem, and he gave Birchas Koyanim. There's a whole Sikha of the Rebbe explaining why he gave this bracha here. And the next Pasuk, but wait, there's more. Vayove Meishav Adon Aleil Meid Vayetzav Vayivarachem. And they then gave both the bracha together. And what was the bracha? V'hinayim Hashem Elokeinu. Interestingly enough, from the end of Parshas Pekudei, Chamishi, I think it also mentions over there that Moshe gave this bracha. I'm just not sure if it was the same bracha, whether it was maybe Chav Gimel Adar before they started the Shivas Yimei, maybe there was one bracha, and then maybe, for sure, there's this bracha, which is on Rosh Chodesh Nisan, we give the bracha. And over here we see immediately, by the way, the connection between Parshas HaChodesh and Shemini. Vayihi bayei Shemini. What day was that of the year of the calendar? Rosh Chodesh Nisan. Which Rosh Chodesh Nisan is the whole idea of HaChodesh Hazel Lochem, which we will read for Parshas HaChodesh. The mitzvah of Kiddush HaChodesh starts from and is associated with Rosh Chodesh Nisan, which is happening this coming week. This is Shabbos and Varachim Chodesh Nisan. So there you go, straight away. It's unusual that what we read in the Chumash, in the Parsha, is connected to the calendar of the year. Vayihi bayei Shemini. What was the 8th day? Which was the 8th day of the inauguration and consecration? Rosh Chodesh Nisan. Now I'm just going to take a pause for a second, even though I'm sure I've spoken about this before. And this is one of my small questions that I have in Judaism already for many years. I don't know why there's not a bigger shturim, a trask, a rash, about the date of Rosh Chodesh Nisan in halachic practice. Does it actually, what do we do to celebrate Rosh Chodesh Nisan? And the reason I have this question is because in many ways, Rosh Chodesh Nisan is the greatest day. How can I say that? Because, as we all know, from those that study Chassidus and the Maimorim of Basi Lagani, the day that Hashem says, and I'm sure we spoke about this many times, the day that Hashem says, Basi Lagani, I came home to my garden. That's Rosh Chodesh Nisan, when he comes down the first time in the physical planet Earth, in a way that it came behemshech to man's work. And he says, Basi Lagani, that's how amazing that day is. My garden Hashem was revealed in the planet right away at creation. Then there was the 7 sins, and then there was 7 tzdikim, and Moshe Rabbeinu came and drew down the Shekhinah, and we say, what date is that? Reish Chodesh Nisan. In a certain sense, and this is so awesome to say, and the only reason we could say it is because this is what the Medrash says, and it's brought down in the Maimorim, that the date of Rosh Chodesh Nisan is even greater than Matan Torah. Even though the Rabbeim said the Matan Torah is Ein Nachamol, there's nothing as great and as awesome, as spectacular, as unbelievable, unforgettable, as the date of Matan Torah, where Hashem himself revealed himself to every single Jew on the highest level. Anoich Yavai Elikecha. And he gave the whole Torah. Kol Masha Talmud Vosar Kosel L'Chadash Ne'emar L'Moshe Misinai. And the Rabbeim said a famous line, Matan Torah Vetn Zaim Nachamol. Matan Torah will never be repeated, even in relation to the days of Mashiach to a certain extent. I once heard the Rebbe say, Matan Torah Vetn Zaim Nachamol, Val Sushanalski Geben Gevarin. It doesn't have to happen again, because that's it. Everything was given on Matan Torah. The whole revolution, the whole ability, the whole idea of the Jewish nation, everything about Judaism, connected to Judaism, revolving around Judaism, is Matan Torah. So that was Vav Sivan. Almost a year later, Rosh Chodesh Nisan is the day Vayehi Bayim Shemini, after the Mishkan was erected in the 7 days of the practice run, so to speak. Shiva Simei Maluyim, comes the 8th day, and Hashem himself comes down, and Hashem says that that day is greater, in a way. Why is it greater? We could say for many reasons. But the main reason that's given is because this represents man's contribution. The fact that God comes down, Hashem reveals himself, that's such a big deal. The Eibishter could do many. It's an act of Hashem. He could do anything. But to say that man elevates himself, Tachteinim Ya'ala Mailas, will soon explain. And he gives a contribution, Truma, and then Hashem comes down invited to a world where man has worked on himself to elevate himself, to transform himself, to refine himself, and then he chooses to reside in man. That's a much greater accomplishment. Now, together with that, it says about Rosh Chodesh Nisan, Rosh Hashanah L'Mlochim, the day that the 10 crowns were given. And also, any student of Chassidus knows all the discourses that start, and we ask a famous question, how could there be 2 Rosh Hashanahs? Could a person have 2 heads? Rosh doesn't only mean Tchilas Hashanah, the beginning of the year, but the head of the year. The head contains the energy and leads with the whole body. So how could you have 2 heads? And then Chassidus explains that we have 1 head of the year for Anhogenisis, for the miraculous channel. And then we have another Rosh Hashanah for Anhogetivis, for the natural channel. And obviously all those Maimorim explain that the nature channel is connected more to the rest of the world. Bereshit bara Elikim. That's the way that Hashem leads and runs the world with all the nations. But with the Jewish people, there's Anhog Nisis, which means a Gilui Elokus, connected to Shem Havaya. And that's why the Medrash says that when they wished to create the world, Rosh Hashanah was Aleph Tishrei. Zeh Hayom Tchilas Masecho. That is the Rosh Hashanah that was the beginning of creation. But Mishakova, Mishabachar HaKadosh Baruch Hu B'Yaakov U'Banav. But when the Eibusha told the Jewish people, Kovalem Rosh Chodesh Shel Gula, Rosh Chodesh Nisan represents the miraculous, miracles, redemption, outside of the natural order, something miraculous. So you'd think, and this is a question that I do have, honestly, you'd think that we'd make a much bigger deal about Rosh Chodesh Nisan than the deal that we actually do make in Minhagim, in Halacha. Look, Rosh Hashanah, when it comes Yom Adin, Hayom Haras Ha'olam, the world is trembling. Everyone stands before Hashem. Everyone's making preparations for a whole month in Elul. And I understand, because over there the word is more L'mata, has to come from below. We're preparing ourselves. It's a day of judgment, whatever. But still, I feel that that's why I'm talking about it again, because we have to talk and talk more and more how amazing Reish Chodesh Nisan is. And therefore we have to plug into it. You understand? This week when we come to the day of Aleph Nisan, I think it's on Tuesday, we have to plug into that day and try to absorb all the energies, the super energies, the infinity, the Gilead Ein Sof, which is connected to Reish Chodesh Nisan. The more we plug in, the more we tune in, the more it works. After we said all that, which is really an introduction, in the pasuk over here, when Hashem comes down, and we said just now that the brachas that Moshe and Aaron gave together, before that, as Rashi brings down over here the Medrash, Rashi says that Dover Acha Kivin Shara Aaron. After Vayetzav Yevarchas Ha'am, and they said, V'hinayim Hashem Elokeinu Aleinu, so it says that the Yidden, the Fisha Kol Shevasim Amalim Shemid the Moshe Lemishkan V'Shimish Be'Parka B'Chol Yom L'Shashta B'Shchina, when Moshe, the 7 days, when Moshe was doing the work itself and the Kohanim were just standing on the side, and the Jews v'nechlamim v'oimrim l'Moshe Moshe Rabbeinu kol ha'terech shetarachnu shetish shechina beineinu v'neidah sheneschapel lanu oven ha'egel. Everything we did and we worked and we gave all these contributions and we built a Mishkan, which was meant to be a sign that Hashem forgave us. It's all for nothing. Nothing happening. It didn't happen yet. The divine presence didn't come down. Moshe says, but watch. The difference is going to be now that Aaron is the one who's going to do it. And like he mentions before, Rashi, Lekach Nefchata, that was his mission. Aaron ochi kedai v'choshev mimeni. Moshe says that Aaron is more worthy than me. Shal yodei korbanosai v'avidosai, shal yidei korbanosai v'avidosai, tisha shchina b'chem, v'teidu shamokim b'chaboy. Wow, wow, wow. Moshe says that Aaron is better than me, and through him it will happen. Yes, we need the brachas over here, but it's Aaron's avodah that causes the Amshachas Hashchina, Vateitze Eish Milifnei Hashem. Which, by the way, there's a Gemara that says Vateitze Eish. There was a fire that descended from heaven that was also part of the Gilead Lakus, besides for the Kvei Davaya. And together with that fire in the form of a lion, there were other miracles that came together with it. So it was divine revelation that came down into the Shechina through the acts of Aaron. So here we have a question. Why through the acts of Aaron? And why does Moshe say, Aaron ochi kedai v'choshev mimeni? How is Aaron choshev mimeni? So the truth is, there's a sikha from the Rebbe. I think it's a Chelik Chof Daled. One of the most unforgettable, unbelievable sikhas of the Rebbe, which probably I mentioned it maybe on this channel before, because this was a life-changing sikha for me. A Chelik Chof Daled, the sikha of Bracha. The Ambrivzesa Bracha, and over there the Rebbe asks a question. It says that when Moshe passed away in Parshas Bracha, Vayivku b'nei Yisrael es Moshe, the males mourned Moshe. But by Aaron it says Kol Beis Yisrael, and Rashi brings it down over there. That means the fact that it says Vayivku b'nei Yisrael es Moshe, those words that Moshe himself writes, brings out the quality of Aaron, not the quality of Moshe. The Rebbe asks questions over there. Over here, at the time of Moshe's passing, we bring out the quality of Aaron, and especially if we mentioned that quality already before. The Torah already mentioned it, and Rashi already mentioned it before, I think in Pashas Matas Masei. So why does the Torah have to mention it over here? And by the way, the day of the Istalkus is the greatest day of Moshe. It's his day. Rashi comes along on Moshe's day and says that the Jews mourned Aaron more than Moshe. Anyways, the Rebbe says something. He doesn't explain it so much. You know, like they say, look it up. The Rebbe says that itself was Vayat. Moshe writes those words. That's Moshe's message. There's a Moshe Rabbeinu, and there's an Aaron. You could think that Moshe is the leader, Moshe Rabbeinu, and we should learn it from his ways. The Rebbe explains, and this runs across many places in Likutei Sichos, there's two different methods, emes and chesed. Aaron represents chesed, Moshe represents emes. And a lot of the different opinions and different stories of the Chumash, it's because Moshe is going with emes and Aaron's going with chesed. So you might think that Moshe emes is the better way. Therefore Moshe comes along in the last day of his life, his greatest day of his life, and he himself gives the message. And that's why he wrote those words, to let you know, look at Aaron. Aaron's way is the better way. And that's how the Rebbe said, Vayal Moshe. This was Moshe's aliyah. On the last day of his life, he came to that awareness, to that consciousness, that Aaron's way is better. Wow. So that's Sikha. I always knew, and I thought it's the last word on the subject about, that's it. Whether you like it or not, my friends, there's nothing to be said after that. If Moshe Rabbeinu himself comes along and says, Avos Yisrael, Chesed is the way. But now we have something to add to that. This week's Parsha, this Rashi, that Moshe says that Aaron is better. But what's the reason why? So on the one hand, you could say, there's nothing as great as Avos Yisrael. There's nothing as important as Avos Yisrael. Avos Yisrael is the most important mitzvah. And therefore, whenever you have a doubt, go with the way of Chesed, go with the way of Avos Yisrael. That's one point. And we'll talk about that soon. But the Rebbe in Likutei Sichos, Chelik Zayin, in the Yisofis, on page 298, he adds another point connected to this Rashi. He brings it down. In Chelik Zayin, in the back, on page 298, he brings out that since we know also according to Chassidus, that Moshe Rabbeinu is the Shemini, the Malka, he represents the one that is bringing godliness down from above to below. That's the, I don't know how you say it in English, the Unterfeir to the Chosin. Aaron is the Mishashvir, the Matranisa. Aaron is the one who brings the Kala to the Chuppah. He's the one who accompanies the Kala. So therefore, we say that since, in other words, there's two dimensions in this dynamic of Hashem coming down to the world and the world elevating. As we mentioned before, the Medrash says that by Matan Torah, what happened was we broke the divide between the spiritual and the physical, the upper worlds and our world, spiritual levels in our world. And the Medrash says that by Matan Torah, what happened was Tachtenim Yalu L'mayla, that which was below rose and came above. Vel Yoinim Yadu L'mata, that which was above came down below. But the Rebbe explains in many places that even though chronologically V'aniya Maschal Hashem starts Al Yoinim Yadu L'mata, but the whole purpose is Tachtenim Yalu L'mayla. That's the greater achievement. That's the greater accomplishment. Similar to what we said before about the Mishkan, really the Mishkan is more of a demonstration and a symbol of Tachtenim Yalu L'mayla. That's why it's greater than Matan Torah B'chlal, in general. Now, who, between the two, Moshe and Aaron, who Moshe brings more the word of Hashem down, that's more a mode of Al Yoinim Yardu L'mata, and Aaron is the one who's more Ba'alois Chesanedes. He's the one who more is involved personally, more intimately, in bringing up the Tachtenim L'mayla. And therefore the Rebbe says, that's exactly what the Rebbe says, that we learn out from the Yenishal Torah of this Rashi, that over here, why does Moshe say that Aaron is greater and more worthy? Because his job is more the Tachtenim Yalu L'mayla, and that's the real Tachlis. So therefore that's more worthy, more special, and therefore he's the one that in the end causes that the Shekhinah should come down. So in other words, I mean, in technical words, you could say, it's like sometimes you have you can have a teacher. He's a teacher and he teaches and he gives lessons, but the words are too abstract still. But then you have the tutor who could take the words of the teacher and bring it down to every single level. And then we say the teacher might be able to say it's the tutor that's more important, because he's the one that actually brings that student, that person, to the place where the words of Hashem inspire him, move him, touch him, elevate him, transform him, and change him. And that's more important, and that's greater. In a way, you could say it like that. So now we have 2 points. Number one, the point is, the Rebbe explains over there in the Likutei Sichos Chelik Zayin clearly on this Rashi, that it's Moshe, it's Aaron, who's the one who actually, since he's the one that's Momatel L'mayla, the one who gets in touch on a personal, individualistic level to who you are and where you're at, and helps you, takes you by the hand and helps you rise. So therefore, you're the one that ultimately finishes the job of Tachtenu Yal L'mayla. So therefore, you're greater than Moshe. You're greater than me. That's what Moshe Rabbeinu says. So now we have that source from this Rashi, and now we can connect these 2 places in the Torah. Here we have a clear story, a Ma'aser Rav that proves that point from the Chumash, from Moshe Rabbeinu's words, that he said clearly, it's Aaron's way that's ultimately going to make the difference. Last stop, last Makeh B'Patish, as they say. The one who really makes the difference are the Aarons of the world, because they reach out to every single individual and help them rise. See there in Chelik Zayin. Now, in Chelik Chof Daled that I mentioned before, over there, the emphasis is just Chesed. That's the way Azay is the Rinyan, Avos Yisrael. Now, the truth is, the Rebbe spoke this by a Farbrengen that I had forgotten about it. Yud Aleph Nissen, Tavshim Mem Beis. The Rebbe spoke the same lesson, and he said the lesson of Pasha Shemini is this lesson, that we see that what causes the Shekhinah to come down, the way of Moshe Rabbeinu, the way of Aaron, and he mentioned the Mishnah, having Talmidav Shal Aaron, Oyev Shalom, V'roidev Shalom, Oyev Sabriyas, the way of Aaron, which is Chesed, and who loves even the Brias, is the way of this generation. And we see this from the story of the Ashrayas Hashchina. And he mentioned by that Farbrengen of Yud Aleph Nissen that this was the way of the Baal Shem Tov, and this was the way of Avraham Avinu, that when it came to being Mekarev Yidden, they started with doing physical tavis. And just to mention another place, in Likutei Sichos Chelik Beis, Baal Loischa, over there too, the Rebbe says there's many paths in being Mekarev Yidden, and he mentions the idea of Aaron, and he says, and by the way, in that Sikha of Shemini, it's taken from a Sikha of Shemini, Tavshel Lamed Beis, that word on Rashi, and I looked it up in the Anocha over there also. He mentioned that this is the way of the Rabbeim, of the Chabad leaders. And in Likutei Sichos Chelik Beis, page 315, he says the same thing. He talks about Aaron, Baal Loischa, and he says, "Und azoy is euch gewend der Weg von der Rabbeim Nesiim." This was the way of our Rabbeim the Nesiim. Bis kwei kedushas meiri v'chami ad mebalei lula v'ad bechlal. Was their arbeit is given uns in the nears. So he says this is taken from a Yud Shvat Sikha, and he was speaking about the Friedrich Rebbe, who's the Stalkus of Yud Shvat, and the Rebbe emphasized again that the way of the Friedrich Rebbe was Ava, love. And he says that, look up again there, page 315 and 316, that Oifen wie es is given by the Nesei Chabad Bechlal, the method of leadership, the fundamental emotion and characteristic and nature of the Chabad leadership, that Oifen wie es is given by the Nesei Chabad Bechlal, und bei Kwei Kedushas Meir V'cham Me'ad Mebalei Lul Befrat, is at the Avos given begilui, the love of the leaders, of the tzaddikim. The love was obvious, it was revealed. Nitna di matorah given her, not only was the objective, everything was to be in the way of light, positivity. Not echt the weg to the matorah is given her an ofen von oir. The path to the objective was also in a way of light. Bedarke kirov, bringing people close, or bedarke noyim, and ways of pleasantness. Hat ungezündet den Neira Vayin Nishma Sodom in alle Sugim von Eden. He ignited the candle of Hashem in all categories of Yidden. So over here we have the lesson for today. Pasha Shemini. First of all, we see that that Aaron starts with a bracha, but wait, there's more. Plus, first Aaron gives a bracha, and then Moshe and Aaron to give noch a bracha, which again shows the power of brachas of tzaddikim. But you know the famous Gemara which says that the Kohen Gadol, Rabbi Shmuel, came into the Kodesh Kodshim and he saw Hashem, and Hashem told him, bless me, and the Kohen Gadol blessed Hashem. And then the Gemara learns out from there. I should have quoted the Gemara, I forgot to quote. From there we learn out, Alti Birchas Hedit Kal Fanecha. So we take the lesson, brachas, every one of us is to work in the way of Aaron, which is about giving brachas. Havei mitalmidav shel Aaron, give people blessings. And then after that comes both brachas from Moshe and Aaron together. So it means Aaron gives twice brachas. First he gives the Birchas Kelim, then the bracha v'Ineya. And we have the Rebbe saying clearly the lesson that we take from that Rashi is that the way of Aaron, which is more of the Momata L'Maila approach, which based on other places also is connected more with the Ava, with the Chesed, that through the Ava and Chesed we're going to reach everybody. So it's not only about the end game, but it's also the path, as the Rebbe says in the other Sikha. How we reach the objective, how we reach the end, has to also be in a way of love. And now when we think about everything we said before, about Vahi Bayem Shemini, how awesome, how unbelievable, how great, how unforgettable, how monumental, epic everything is, connected to Rosh Chodesh Nisan. And we have to realize that what brings it all out, the Avodah of Chesed, the Avodah of Aaron. Maybe she should help. We should take this lesson, which is a lesson that never ends, and we have to keep on working on it. Avos Yisrael is one of those things that no matter how far you think you reach in Avos Yisrael, there's always room for more. So the Rebbe should help that we should keep on working on our Avos Yisrael, and through that will affect that this will bring out more Ubarchenu Avinu Kulonu Ke'echad Yachad Nenatzeach, that through Avos Yisrael will bring about the Gula Mitzvah Shlema. Take it from a yad mamish, posting from my home. Be'ez Hashem Yitbarek, your man in Melbourne.